Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so happy to have Jen Anderson with me today. With over 15 years dedicated to teaching and studying the principles around the world, Jen has developed her own unique voice for sharing this one simple truth. Her clear and heartfelt teaching resonates with audiences, whether at a large conference, in a small group, or individually. Her own transformation, moving beyond shyness, depression, and eating disorders, continues to inspire her to point others to what can happen when they see their true nature. Hi, Jen. I am so excited to have you here. As I said, I've been following you for years and listening to your videos. So in a way, we always feel like we know each other. But this is the first time we're actually going to be talking. So I'm so excited that you managed to come on today. And we had Dave on last week. So I got to share or hear rather your partner's what he's working on, which you both work on together. So I'm going to really love to hear how you came together, how you do the work that you do. But before that, I want to hear a little bit about your journey and what had you led you rather to the principles.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And it is really nice to meet you, even though it's virtual. I came across this understanding almost 16 years ago. And I always say it was almost by mistake because I had no idea what I was wandering into. I'd been away on a snowboard season and then travelled in New Zealand for a year, and I got back and my sister had kind of made all these new friends. And I got invited to this dinner and I had absolutely no idea what anyone was talking about. And they were talking about three principles and different people were trying to describe it to me. And I had no clue what they were talking about. And I showed up to this training in London with Dr. Roger Mills and a lady called Margaret Opio. And like the first half the day I missed because I'd got so anxious that I had to introduce myself and say my name in front of about 30 people. But by the end of that day, something had settled in me. I was a bit quieter. And then after the third day, I remember the drive home, I was just so still. And my parents thought I'd either joined a cult or I was on drugs because the change in me was so huge. And they'd come from a background of self-development. They'd just thrown everything at me because I'd struggled so much as a teenager with anxiety, shyness, eating disorders, depression. And I'd always been quiet and shy and struggled around people, but I was always kind of safe with my family. And then suddenly as a teenager, I got uncomfortable around my family. So I had no place where I ever felt comfortable in my own skin. And then suddenly I walked through the door after being in London for 3 days, totally at peace with myself and completely comfortable in my own skin. And I had no words to describe what had happened. I knew that three principles had been spoken about, and I knew that I'd seen the prison inmates sharing their experience of learning this in prisons, and I've seen different videos from work that Roger had done with homeless communities. But I couldn't put into words what had happened. I just felt different. And I think it took me a couple of years really to almost create a language to what happened. And it was very much like a disintegration of who I thought I was. And I'd always believed I was the quiet, shy, insecure one in the family. I'd always believed that I was going to struggle. At 13 or 14, when I saw the doctor for my eating disorder, they said, you'll probably struggle with this for life. So it felt like I got a life sentence of eating disorders at the age of 13, 14. And in that period, I was 23 when I came across the principles. I saw some fantastic people who genuinely wanted to help me. But I spent so much time reliving uncomfortable situations, things from my past, talking about myself, talking about my problems. And as I look back, I can see that in that 10 years, I actually got worse, not better. So then when I heard Roger speak, it was like he spoke to something in me that knew what he was saying was completely true. that there was something that woke up in me that he knew existed. And I always say that that was Roger's greatest gift in my mind as a teacher, that he knew that people were completely whole. Like, he didn't see what they presented. He didn't see a character. He saw the truth of them. And I feel like that's the thing that woke me up, because I'd been seen, like, even by my parents, as broken and struggling and not okay for a really long time. And I don't know, I felt, my sister came along and she'd studied all kinds of things, and she's like, yeah, that was cool. Another thing, kind of. I'm like, no, you don't realise this is it. Mm-hmm. What's being shared here is, this is it. Like, I couldn't put it in any other way. And even though I would still say, looking back, I was very quiet and in lots of ways, I was comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wanted to share this with other people. And I was going to have to get over myself if I wanted to do that. And the beautiful thing was, I never had to do anything, because it just came, like the words just came. Shortly after coming across the principles, I met my ex-husband, Rudy, and he really helped me, because we'd do events together and he'd probably share 90% of the time, and I'd be allowed to kind of sit there and chip in. And then over that time, I found my own voice and got more and more comfortable sharing what I'd found in my own language. And I think that's the thing I always feel is important for people to know, is share from what you've seen. You don't have to try and be like anyone. Like, Sydney Banks had his incredible insight, and then he shared in the best way he could with people. And I know the times where I felt I've kind of got in my head again has been when I've tried to be like someone else, believe that they knew the right way of sharing this. But I've seen over the last 16 years people sharing in different ways, but pointing to the same thing. And it's what's being pointed to that's important, not the way in which it's shared. Like, I know that this changed my life in such a huge way. I'd probably say it saved my life, because I was getting to points in my life where I didn't feel like I could be here. It's like I didn't want to not be here, but I didn't know how to be here, because I felt so uncomfortable with life. And this woke something up in me that's allowed me to navigate all kinds of things. You know, in the last 16 years, I've lost people that I've loved, and had grief and sadness. I've been married, I've been divorced. But this understanding has never left. It's been something that's carried me at times through life. I feel like it's something I'm realizing more and more. When I get out of my own way, there is this deeper intelligence in life that knows how to live and knows how to move. And I've been amazed at kind of what I have been able to achieve and create since then, because I'm like, I know that the ego of me couldn't have done any of that stuff. Like, Rudy and I traveled the world and created 3 Principles movies, made some fantastic friends, got to bear witness to people sharing just the most beautiful stories in the most honest ways, in prisons, in homeless shelters, in business, in schools, in juvenile detention. And I can honestly say, like, it's been like the biggest privilege to have been allowed into people's lives, to hear them share what woke up within them. It seems that with gentle pointing and guiding is enough for people to find it within themselves, and then they're away. And I have to describe it as that 3-day training introduced me to the best guide and teacher I could have ever asked for. And I never would have thought to look inside me and then realize that I take that me. So I think my introduction to it was at the most perfect time and with one of the most beautiful teachers. I'm so grateful to have learned from Roger and from Margaret.
That's so beautiful on so many levels. Gosh, I felt like I was listening to myself for a while there. Haven't traveled the world teaching it so much, but definitely how life-changing it is. You know, I suffered too from shyness and insecurity and all those things for so many years and played so small. And it's just remarkable what just looking in this direction can just, what happens to you once you know that you don't have to believe this story you told about yourself. Again, I'm the shy one, I'm the introvert, I'm the this, I'm the that. And when I realized I didn't have to, that, those were just some labels. I could create any label I wanted. It was just life-changing. So, yeah, so beautiful. And I love what you're saying. And again, yes, it's when we know, we really know, it's unquestionable that everybody is whole and complete on the inside. And we hold that space for whoever we're working with. Like you said, it impacted you and Roger saw you. I remember years ago watching you and Rudy and Joe Bailey discussing your relationship. And I remember feeling so blown away at the beauty, the grace, the authenticity, the whatever it is that you showed as you did that series of interviews with him. And I think that coming apart can be done with truth, the truth of the pain of it, but with the beauty of the love that doesn't die, it just changes form. So, and also I think, I just would love you to just talk about that a little bit, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was such an interesting time, because what happened kind of when I first came across the principles was that crumbling of my character. And this is going back 5 years now. Suddenly I realized I'd been around the principles about 10 years. I'd created another whole persona, who I thought I was and who I thought I should be. And it was just as convincing. And it seemed to be truer because it was healthier, but still quite restrictive. I thought I was teaching and being this kind of this awareness, this consciousness stuff, then it's limitless. But I'd put all of these kind of boxes on myself, and it was completely shocking to me to have to go away, to come back from South Africa after working out there with Dave, and have to come back and tell Rudy, I don't want to be with you anymore, I've fallen in love with someone else. And it took me a good few months, probably up until that retreat, to be able to say the word affair. Like, it was such a shameful thing for me. I wasn't a person I probably had some thinking around divorce and affairs and things, and it felt like I'm totally in the unknown. And then they've had this sort of back and forth, and I can't remember which one of them said it, but they said, oh, isn't it interesting that she thinks she lives more in the unknown now than she normally does? And it was like something just hit me. And I realized we live in these world of beliefs as if they're true and factual. And it's never been known. Because if you'd asked me a few months before, would you ever have an affair and separate from your husband? I'd be like, no way, that's not who I am. Mm-hmm. But it felt fixed and true because it was how I'd lived for that period of time. And I think the other thing that came from that was this ability for me to show up and be honest in a relationship, I think, with a lot of love and a lot of honesty. And it's been nice to have been able to remain friends and show that kind of connection didn't have to be completely lost. It changed, it transformed. But I think it taught me so much about myself. And it took me a good year to feel comfortable. I was still sharing, but to start to feel comfortable again, because I created the idea that with this understanding, relationships always stay together. Mm-hmm. So somehow it was I'd done something wrong, and I'd have all kinds of thoughts. You're going to be punished for this. Dave's going to die in a car accident tomorrow because you two are bad. All this kind of thought. But having the understanding, it was almost like I got to be aware of that. And knowing what I did know about life is if you can stay more alive, life will be a lot easier. And I remember after probably about 8 or 9 months, I used to get quite upset at night and be like, oh my God, I feel so bad. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I've destroyed everyone's lives and thrown everything up in the air. And Dave was so kind and patient. And I always remember we were in the car somewhere, and I was getting into it again, and he went, "Do you think you're milking this a bit now?" Or something like that. And it wasn't said in a horrible way. It was said in a light-hearted way. And I realized how easy it is to get lost in our stories, totally lost in them. And the story of guilt and shame seemed like a worthy one, because it really helped me see how it's all made up. There isn't like a blueprint to life, and I'd somehow stepped off it and made the wrong decision or done something wrong. I didn't have to buy into that anymore. And I think sometimes life does hand us something. And I felt like that in my life was this, like, have you ever seen a child create a beautiful sandcastle on a beach? He said, the joy of it, the fun of it. You might spend the whole day doing it. And he said, and then have you seen them destroy it and stamp on it? And he said, Jen, you do realise creation and destruction are one and the same. And that was something that came back to me again and again, because I realised I may have kind of walked out of one life, but life doesn't stop creating. And creation and destruction are two words to describe the same thing. It's change. And change is the nature of this life stuff. But I've got more of an appreciation of what's been observing it. And that was a word I used to use a lot when I first came across this. Like, I used to be fully in it. I was the actress in my play. And I used to feel like I was walking around on a stage like everyone was looking at me. I don't know why I thought I was so important. But suddenly I was aware that what's been observing that? What's been aware? Like, I remember on that 3-day, remembering an experience I'd had as a teenager when I'd taken drugs. Because I used to either drink or take drugs to be able to socialise and go out and do the things that teenagers do. And I remember my heart had been racing. I can't remember what it was I'd taken. And I was sat in a house, I didn't know where I was. But there was this quiet voice saying, you're all right, you're all right, you're all right. And when I look back now, the awareness was always in my life. I just didn't know to listen to it. And I feel like when I came across the principles, it was like tuning down the noise of my character and who I think I thought I was, and the volume going up slightly on the awareness, on the knowing, on what we really are. Mm. And it had never left. Like, I would have some people think you come across the principles and then you gain something and you become more aware of what was always there. And I think that's important, because people often think they're looking for something that they haven't got. And what this is showing you what you already have, who you already are. But I remember Dr. Keith Blevins saying to me, thought will keep you humble, thought will bring you to your knees. And Dick and Bettinger saying to me, when you come across these principles, hold on to the seat of your pants or something, because it's been a ride. And I thought when I understood enough, I was going to be happy all the time. I was going to love everyone. I was never going to be reactive. And I'm not saying that isn't possible. Like, I know that I've been listening to some talks recently with Eckhart Tolle, and he says that he's in this awareness all the time. I'm not. I get totally lost and bought into it sometimes, but not for long. And the awareness that you're doing this to yourself it doesn't go away. And I always remember saying to Rudy, it's like I got this kind of skip to the end thing where I could play this out for a really long time and really suffer and struggle, or you could just skip to the end where you know you're going to feel fine again. Some of the time now I can just skip to the end and miss it out, and other times I go through it. But it's seeing that the irrelevance of that, the irrelevance of what shows up, and not in that life doesn't matter way, but there's something so much deeper than what shows up and who we think we are, and whether I'm married or not married, or whether I'm this or I'm that. To be able to say I had an affair and be comfortable, not on the scale of big celebrities or anything, but Rudy and I were so well known in the Three Principles community. We'd always joke that we were the Brangelina of the Three Principles, and we were the cutest couple. And I don't think I ever spoke about the Three Principles keep you together or anything like that. And I look back and I know that when I stood and gave talks and we did things together, it was from what I saw in that moment, from who I was showing up as then. It was totally authentic to who I was then. And I realised I didn't have to apologise. I can't help that people create this idea of who I was and what our relationship was. And it's been nice because the peace that's come from that, and the realisation that I don't need people's approval. I don't need people to like me. People unfriend me. It was like, wow, and then you're still all right. You're still okay. And actually, some of my best friends now, people that came forward in that time, like Terry Rubenstein and me, she was a fantastic person for me. And we'd only ever kind of admired each other from a distance before. And I just got this thought, phone her. Mm-hmm. And Dick and Keith, so even some of the people that judged me and said things about me, we've moved on. And I think that's the lovely thing. We can totally take it, and actually everything changes. None of it's permanent.
Well, oh my gosh, I feel the same as I felt when I watched the videos a few years ago. What an amazing demonstration of the principles, and everything you went through, how you handled it, how you talk about it. Everything you're saying, I'm just hanging on every word because it's so true. And I think that what's coming up for me, the word courage, these personas or these opinions or even, I think, unfortunately, sometimes in the 3P community, I think the message is, oh, this is going to keep you together for life. You'll never question your relationship. And then people stay in situations where their wisdom is saying, no, this is not right for you anymore. And allowing yourself to listen to that inner guidance and be like, it's okay. Because I love what you said, that you'd left one persona behind and innocently created a whole other one that you were living within. I love what you're sharing. And I think you did such an incredible service to everybody that comes into this understanding, to not be so dogmatic and so rigid and think it means something.
I went to Nepal to do a Vipassana as Rudy and I were separating, and I lasted 3 days. Like, I could not be. It was really quite an intense Vipassana. I didn't realise quite how intense it would be, meditation all day, even when you're walking, when you're eating. I couldn't be alone with my own mind. And when I had to go and tell the nun that I wanted to leave, and that was quite huge for me because I don't like to go back on commitments. And she just said, have you got any children? And I said, no. She said, okay. And then I stood up and I thanked her, and she said, I hope you can find the courage to do what you need to do. And there was something in what she said, and she just looked me in the eyes and me, because I'd done a lot of that in my life, and it doesn't serve anyone when you're not honest with yourself. And that was one of the things Dave said to me. He said, I don't care what you do. He said, but if you're honest with yourself, then you're honest with the world, and the world knows what to do with that. Mm-hmm. So please just be honest with yourself. And I think that was one of the things. And Terry Rubenstein said to me, you don't have to make a decision, but a decision will be made.
Wow. It's just so, what a beautiful conversation, what a deep conversation. And I know this is going to be so helpful for so many people to hear this. And I'm just so grateful for your, as I said before, your courage and your authenticity and your honest and your willingness to just share exactly where you're at. And the wonder, we're running out of time. But they've covered all the wonderful work that you do together with your freedom thinking community. But I just think this is a really important conversation, because I think that there are people that have misconceptions about I won't go into it all now, but I think this is a very liberating conversation, and I'm very excited to share it with people, and on many levels. That's what we touched on in the beginning about, the shyness and the insecurity and that sort of persona that keeps us back to I just see that the choices that came as an evolution of that, really getting in touch with the authentic self and what you needed to do for your life, and let go of all the people pleasing and the caring about what other people think, and the self-judgment too. So thank you so much. That was really a beautiful conversation.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. Well, hopefully I will see you again. We can have another talk about another thing, about what you're doing in your life. But this was beautiful, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladeyjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.